This webinar aims to inspire members and partners to champion biodiversity, and we'll look at opportunities to provide insights in how community rail can increase biodiversity in the station environment. Our panellists will be taking us on a journey throughout this webinar, leading to 3 important outcomes. And by the end, we hope you will each have a deeper understanding of the role community rail can play in championing biodiversity, increased knowledge of good practice and effective partnership working to develop and implement successful biodiversity projects, a greater awareness of biodiversity work being undertaken and how to ensure its long-term impact, inspiration and increased confidence to cultivate your own biodiversity activities. We'd also like to hear from you, so please do make use of the panel discussions parts of the agenda to contribute, and we're leaving enough time for you to share your thoughts, ideas and experiences. So we're going to now move straight on with our first panellist, Dr. Neil Strong, Biodiversity Strategy Manager with Network Rail, and followed by Simon Hancock, Community Network Coordinator with the Conservation Volunteers. A quick thanks to Simon, who's kindly stepped in last minute to replace his colleague Fiona Richards, who due to unforeseen circumstances cannot speak today. So it's just a slight change to the advertised speaker. And I'll pass you over to Neil now. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you very much, Sarah. Hopefully you can see my screen. And also thank you to Hannah and Hazel and Community Rail Partnership just for having me here today and kicking off in the unenviable task of starting this off. So hopefully we can go well. I'm going to talk to you today about biodiversity and the whole of the operational railway. And I'm going to look at just a little piece on what actually is biodiversity, and then look at some of the challenging targets and the challenging infrastructure that we have to manage as I sort of work across the whole of GB, so working in England, Scotland and Wales, and managing that biodiversity across that whole network. But then looking at the opportunities that we've got with that estate, and then a couple of sort of case studies of 2 locations, one on the East Coast Main Line and then one down in Somerset, just to finish off, and then yeah, hopefully move on to Simon after me. So biodiversity, some of you may already know, you'll have seen biodiversity. The dictionary definition of biodiversity is the variety of all living things. And I've just put a few pictures there of the sorts of biodiversity that we have on the railway, but they're all red. So you've got red campion on the left, and there's a red admiral and a red start, and then some magnificent redwood trees down in Bradford on Avon. Those are the biggest lumps of wood that we have on the railway estate. They're, I think the tallest one is nearly 24 meters tall. Not quite as big as their North American cousins, but actually fabulous pieces of nature that we have on the estate. And it's that sort of thing. Not everything we've got is red, but it's that opportunity that we've got for all those different things, whether it's insects or birds or plants, to have on our estate. But there is a challenge, and we'll all have seen that, you know, we all know about the climate crisis, but there is also that biodiversity crisis. And this graph I've put here is just to show the sort of thing. I mean, this graph is essentially my lifetime. It's not my fault that the graph is going down, but biodiversity, this is just in the UK, and there is a dramatic decline in the amount of biodiversity that, you know, the impact of humans, of the way we're managing the sort of the earth in general is causing that decline in biodiversity. Network Rail and my role within the company, and I'm just scribbling out all the things just to put on another graph, is another challenging target. We have been set the challenge of actually achieving no net loss of biodiversity on the railway estate by 2024, but also going forward from that, we need to achieve biodiversity net gain by 2035. So taking that baseline of this year and making sure that by 2024 we've got the same as we had last year, but then getting that graph to start turning up the way. So by 2035, moving that into a net gain scenario. But we've got to do that on a very challenging infrastructure. And here's just a few pictures of just the sorts of things that we have to work with on the railway estate. And that picture that you can see there, the 52,000 hectares, that is the size of the railway estate in Britain. And I put the picture there because if you squash it all together, that's about the Isle of Wight and a half, if you squash the whole of the railway in England, Scotland and Wales. And within that, we've got trains going at 200 kilometers an hour. It's 125 miles an hour is their top speed. You've got overhead power lines with 25,000 volts. You've got 30,000 kilometers of fences and all those bridges and viaducts, all that stuff that is just, we need to make sure that we can run those trains safely, efficiently, but also we've got to recognize what we've got alongside those railways. But as I keep telling people, what an opportunity. That's my office. That's my, I'd like to say it's my office window. It's not, it's a very grey high Wycombe at the moment, but that is the opportunity that we have across the rail network. And, you know, it's just that ability to, you know, before COVID, we were carrying somewhere just over 1.5 billion passengers every year across the rail network. We go past 7 million neighbours directly onto the back of our fence, their back gardens. But we're also within 500 meters of 1/3 of the population of Britain. If we want people to see green things and to take people places where they can go and see green stuff, we have that massive opportunity. And we do that with 40,000 staff working for Network Rail. There's maybe 1,000 people who are dealing with the management of the vegetation and the biodiversity. We've got about 30 ecologists now, which has gone up 6 times in the last couple of years. So there really is an emphasis on really doing this work well. And the whole of that 40,000 workforce has the opportunity to use 5 volunteer days every year. That's where we can start working with the community rail teams just to go and help out and actually do things better with the nature that we've got already on our estate, but also ones that we can introduce. Let's just put a few more statistics up just to show you what we do have already. We've just done some work which has shown that we've got 21 different habitat types across the rail network. And what we've found is that we've actually got almost double the woodland cover. The average woodland cover for Britain is about 11-12%. We've got somewhere in the region of 20 to 23% on our side of the fence already. And a lot of protected species, a lot of rare species already make their home on the railway. And it's that opportunity that we've got to take that a little bit further and do a little bit more. And station areas really are those places where we can do that, because they're quite boring at the moment, those flat tops where you obviously need passengers, but there's space for the little things as well. You know, we've got 6 million trees on our side of the fence. There's areas where, you know, we're already planting trees and doing work, and providing those guys, those bottom 3 boxes on the right hand side is the sorts of guys we're providing our staff. But that online design guide is one that's available, and I'll make sure we provide the link when the presentations get sent out, that anybody can use, and it gives guidance on what to do with certain types of habitat, and if you've got the wrong habitat, how you might change it into a new one. And we've got a lot of those habitats. I mentioned 21 different types. These are all in the on the railway, and you can see it varies from structures which have got spiders and bats living in them. We've got coastal habitat. We've got arable fields that we're going through. Those wonderful redwoods in Bradford on Avon again. And that photo on the right hand side is a few colleagues staring up at an area, wondering what to do with it. And you can just make out that there's the railway fence in the top right hand corner. That's the back of the platform. That area there is a little bit too steep for us to work with community groups to do any work on it, because it's quite boring, and it's obviously got the obligatory traffic cone that's been hoiked over the brick wall. But there is an opportunity, and we did this at Hadley Wood, which, as I say, is on the East Coast Main Line. It's just a little bit further north of north of London, and it was an area where we'd actually done the wrong sort of vegetation work to start with, and the community were very angry. We got onto the front page of the newspapers, but we managed to turn it around working with that community, and we actually instigated a trial to look and to see if we could actually reinstate the railway hedge back onto the side of the fence. It was something that was put there in the 1840s and 1850s when the railways were built, and actually hedgerows are massively good for biodiversity. And so what we've done there is work with the community. We've planted trees, planted hedgerow species. We've also done some direct seeding, so putting the seeds down, letting nature do what it does normally, and also looking at the natural regeneration. And one of the things that colleagues are really surprised about is, and you may not be, the survival rate of the plants that are put in by the volunteers is far better than that were actually by the people who we were paying to do the work. And even the height of the regrowth that we've got from those trees is working. So it really does demonstrate that actually working with those volunteers is a good thing. And you can see with the community, we've managed to turn around a really bad situation for Network Rail into something that's really good. We've got the interpretation boards and everything is working really well in that area. And another site is down in Somerset. This is one that's just recently come up. You can see these couple of yew trees just in that photograph there. They were planted in 1953 for the Queen's coronation, and the community have come to us and said, look, we've got the Jubilee is next year. We'd like to do something to reinstate this garden, to get it back to what it is. And so we're working with the Tree Council. John Stokes from the Tree Council has been down, looked at the trees. There's a couple of beech trees which are starting to affect the yew trees which were planted in 1953. And so we've got a plan to work with the community group and the community rail down there at Yatton and actually get rid of the beech trees and work with them so that as part of the Queen's Green Canopy, which is the celebration of the Jubilee next year, we can actually reinstate that garden and get it looking good again, but also choose right species for the understory that will help with that biodiversity. And it's that working with that biodiversity and the railway that these two people have picked up on. The chap on the left is John Varley. He did a big study in 2018 of the railway, and you can see there that he recognised that the railway could be a natural asset, and it has that central role, and we can actually provide opportunities and benefits for people, but also for the wildlife that is making the railway its home. And the chap on the right hand side is Keith Williams, and he was the author of the William Schaap Review, which is the big review that's just taken place at the railway in Britain. And you can see there that he's talking about extensive tree planting on our estate, but also using that vegetation and managing it well, and it can actually benefit those people who live next door to the railway. And you can see therefore that we've got a massive opportunity and a lot of support from very high up to actually do a lot of good work, not only on the railway, but with people like the community rail partnerships. It's a very brief run through, and hopefully that'll have raised some thoughts and raised some questions. And I'd like now to hand over to Simon Hancock, who's the community network coordinator at TCV.
Yeah, hi there. Thanks, Neil. In a strange coincidence, in a previous career, I actually used to be a land surveyor, so I've seen quite a lot of the environments you've just been mentioning there, traipsing through woods, etc. So yeah, good morning, everybody. Like the guy said, I've just stepped in for my boss Fiona, who can't make it today. So I'm going to do a little bit of an introduction to the conservation volunteers, as TCV, as a lot of people know us in the industry and in the charity sector. And our motto is that we really do like to connect people and connect them with the local green spaces. And on that little photo that you can see in my presentation, we've got some activity at one of our green gyms, which is another bit of what we do. They are run by TCV rather than community groups. Looks like they've got a nice little vegetable crop there as well. So I'm the community network coordinator. I look after all the groups that we have, very similar to the railway groups. We've got, just as I've been online this morning, we've just got our 1700th group sign up today, which I'll be sure to email my boss about later. So TCV, the conservation volunteers, we like to connect people to green spaces that form part of a vital, healthy, happy community, bringing people together to create, improve and care for green spaces. And as I discussed with Hannah and Hazel, very briefly, the groups that we do are very similar to your groups, probably a bit smaller, but obviously ours are all over the country and away from railway stations. However, we have had quite a few of your guys signing up recently. So we see a very good alignment with what we do and how the groups can interact with each other and what we can offer to some of the railway groups. So BTCV, as we used to be called a long time ago, it was our 60th anniversary in 2019. Not going quite as long as those yew trees have been planted, but we're getting there. And we've seen a scale back in the last sort of 10 years. Before I started, I've been enrolled about just over 2 years now. But we're still slogging on, and we're just trying to get the groups more involved. So these are our 4 outcomes that we're trying to work by. So we're focused on health and well-being, community, learning and skills, and the environment. So they're really the basis of all the work that we do. So from a health and well-being point of view, I'm seeing personally quite a big increase in queries from sort of groups that are keen on improving people's mental health, given the last 18 months with we're getting feedback that a lot of people have been stuck inside. They want to get outside just to do something, especially when people have not really been able to go anywhere far afield from where they've lived during lockdown. We're getting a lot more interest from local groups who want to improve their area. People that wanted to get out in their own communities, just do something to improve where they live, especially in big cities, because I think the lockdowns affected people a bit more in big cities than it has in sort of rural areas, because I think people have realised there's not a lot to do in big cities when you can't really go anywhere far afield. So we've had a lot of community gardens, groups wanting to tidy up local areas, things like that. And we try and focus on learning and skills as well. So over the period of the last 18 months, especially, we've obviously not been able to deliver really any of our normal training that we would do at our localities. So we've tried to move away to some online courses. We've done a very big webinar last year about health and safety and how groups can sort of effectively work during lockdown within government regulations. And then we're trying to essentially move it forward where we can leverage the knowledge of the staff that we've got and maybe put some like sort of more online training on, put little YouTube snippets, things like that, just to add value, even though membership of the community network is free. And obviously all that really then combines to improving the local environment, the national environment. Like Neil said, there is a lot of activity in tree planting. We're running an initiative at the moment with a green energy company called OVO. It's just started again, and if we can get uptake of all the saplings and whips that we've got, 600,000 this year, that will have been 2 million trees that TCV has planted with OVO. So that's a great initiative that's just started running, and we'll be marketing that shortly. We always get rid of all the trees. Normally within about 2 months, they just fly off the shelf, so to speak. So TCV, obviously, we like to think of ourselves as a local charity with a national reach. So we've got about 20 regional offices and 1,700 community groups spread out all over the UK and Northern Ireland. The green dots that you can see on the map of the UK are actual TCV offices. As you can imagine, those areas are a bit more focused on working with people in their local environments. So we've got anything ranging from 2 to 10, 15 staff at each site. And those guys do, thankless work, but non-stop work really throughout the year, just to try and work with local communities. The big cities tend to be more focused towards community groups. Outside places like York and Bristol, where it's probably a bit more sort of towards the sort of countryside type of work that we're doing out there. But the community network supports local community groups across the UK. So that's what I do. So that's part of my role, is to interact with the groups, answer any questions they've got, help them. If I can't help them with what they're actually asking me, I'll find one of my colleagues that can. We've got colleagues like myself who've been working there for a short amount of time with no background in conservation, to people that have been working for the charity for over 40 years. So we really do try and help people get the answers to the questions they want on a daily basis. And that's where I come in. So a big part of what we do is trying to get people to work together. In the cities, we have a lot of open days where we can get groups together, talking to each other, just talking about what they do, working with each other, bringing hints and tips together, tackling issues that sort of matter to them on a daily basis. And it's just essentially about bringing people together. I mean, I personally have not been in the office yet, so I'm out on a limb. I can't wait to get back into the office. And I'm sure a lot of our groups, they ring me up, they email me, they ask when we're starting to do training again, when we're running open days again. So the appetite is there. and we're hoping that people will slowly start to get back outside. Not the best time to go back outside now, because it's absolutely chucking it down here. But people do want to get back outside, back to what they like to do. You know, and people use the green spaces for different things. We have community gardens in Leicester where we have sort of groups of Asian ladies that grow sort of Asian vegetables, which, you know, is quite enlightening for us to see what they do. Whereas, you know, we've got all sorts of different groups. We've got wildlife groups, we've got people that monitor bats, we've got people that like to grow sort of ancient and historic plants over in Manchester, trying to get ancient species back into the ground, so to speak. We've got wildlife groups, we've got people that just run and conserve woods, all sorts of different things. So there's not really any limit to the type of group we'll try and help. And we like to take a local approach to people. We've got sites in South Yorkshire especially that are regeneration sites, so taking sites that were, what for want of a better expression, slag heaps, where all the coal rubble was placed. They've been regenerated, and TCV are working with a land trust to monitor these sites, to make sure they're kept clean, make sure the plantation is kept trimmed, etc. And we run 1 or 2 days a week on those sites, just bringing people from specifically in those sites, not fantastic areas, because they are areas that were hit with the closure of the coal mines. So we try and get people on board coming to work with us to make a difference where they actually live. And we're inundated with requests for people to work on those days. And that picture there, as you can see, David Attenborough, he's worked with TCV and BTCV for quite a long time. And the community, I'll talk a bit more about the community network now. So as I just said, we've just gone to 1,700 members today. And it's free to join the network. I'll talk about what it offers shortly. But our members are generally extremely keen to make a difference in their local areas. Like I said, we've got all sorts of different groups. We've even got astronomy groups. But as a side thing, they will go out and tidy up and look after areas where they actually meet. So if you join the TCV community network, we've got quite a lot of benefits that you can access. So we've got shared resources, and what we mean by that is just like access to the full website, the main TCV website, access to staff, whether it be staff that work locally or me or any staff that you can actually call up and have a chat to. We offer quite a lot of health and safety guidance, which has been particularly useful over the last sort of 18 months or so. Safeguarding support for your group if you've got any younger members or people with disabilities or any other challenges. Advice on recruitment and retention, how to get more group members, how to then keep the members. Conservation mini guides, there's loads of those on the website. And our famous conservation handbooks, which actually used to be hardback handbooks, but now they're all digitized and they're all on the website. As I mentioned earlier, we do sort of online training and webinars, just like this one, or just webinars and training on random topics. We do some on trees, we do some on bird calls, we do some on amphibians, just things like that, things that we think people might be interested in. And obviously you can get access to the TCV's community network website, which is more focused towards the group members rather than just the general TCV website. And we also offer a range of negotiated discounts from tool suppliers, trees, seeds and equipment, things like that, things that you might find useful that sometimes might be a little bit expensive, or you might not know where to get them from. So we've got a few suppliers and a few of our key partners linked up on there as well. We do our newsletter, which I write, which is a quarterly newsletter, which is sent out to all our network members. Our network members love to send me their stories, so I always put about 6 of them in each one, and news, events, that I put in there. I put access to funding. Any stories that I think people might find interesting, I'll just put in the newsletter. Link to our social media sites, things like that. And we always put a link to our annual survey in there, which we've just done, and I'm just analysing the results of at the moment, just to actually engage with the network members, see what they think, see how they think we're doing, ask them if they've got any other ideas, just to get their feedback, really, because at the end of the day, it's the community network, and we want feedback from our community members. And that's a great quote we've had from one of our group leaders called John Bullen, basically saying they're proud to be members of TCV. And now, I was thrilled when I read that, especially as it name checks me, which is even better. From a funding point of view, we've got an organisation called the Chestnut Fund, which makes grants available and encourages groups to carry out conservation activities. So it's funded and administered by TCB, but it is a sort of semi-independent board of trustees. And they do startup grants for new groups of £150 and support grants of £350 for tools and things like that. And I also have access to something called Grant Finder, which is a web system that I use, which essentially gives me access to 8,000 trusts, company sponsors, government funding, lottery awards, things like that. So anybody can get access to that, and I will search for I'll search for funders depending on the criteria that they send me, which is great for groups because it doesn't just rely on the Chestnut Fund for those smaller awards. People can, I've had ones where somebody's sent me a request through for £100,000 and I found them about 7 different opportunities, so I've just sent them links to that. And we work with Zurich Insurance for well over 15 years now, and as you can imagine, I'm sure all your local railway community groups have insurance and very much need it. So the groups really don't want to be doing anything at all without insurance. They offer a couple of flat rate, very reasonable packages, and they will offer a discount to TCB members on any sort of bespoke packages for anything which is sort of like more unusual that some of our groups might do. Some of them are only litter picking groups, but others are doing sort of chainsaw activities using small plant machinery, so things like that, working on dangerous sites. Even if you're doing litter picking, you do need insurance to make sure you're covered just in case anything happens. So I put that one of me in because I wasn't going to be presenting this, so Fiona just wanted to give you an introduction to me. So I thought I'd sneak a picture of me and my younger generation in green spaces when you can actually get them out. But as you can see, one of them still can't put a phone down, even when she's outside. It's very rare you can see both of them without a phone in, but there you go. So I promote the network, do with all sorts of inquiries from group members, like I said before. If I can't answer a question directly, I will probably know somebody that can. I've got loads of colleagues with years of experience who I can refer back to and get any help on any questions on anything from sort of like, design to planting to building hard standings, all sorts of different things. But if you want to get hold of me by email, my email's down there and my number's down there as well, so you can always give me a call. We run a Heroes Award every year to reward our staff and our community group members this year, which we've not done before. So the group that won, we're actually thrilled. They nominate themselves, but obviously then we choose which group to win. And there's so much more we want to achieve, and we really do think that coming out of lockdown, people are going to be chomping at the bit, so to speak, to get out there and help and improve their local environments. So, as a practical example, we've got a group working with our office in Bedford, TCV Bedford, and it's in partnership with Network Rail and Nature England, a group at Great Stookley, which is a site of scientific special interest. Been going for about 5 years, so it's working on a big railway cutting. nationally important for hosting plants. And the team themselves have been working there for 15 years, trying to keep that area usable and habitable for wildflowers and all sorts of wildlife. So it's quite a big site, and it's been going for a long time. So they're doing a great job down there. So they do run 100 task days every year, which is fantastic, really. So the stuff they do is of maintaining the grassland, improving conditions for wildflowers, and maintaining that sort of area for some great biodiversity. And they obviously trim back areas to make sure that people can get access as well, because you know how quickly blackthorn and bramble can take over. And the native trees and shrubs are also maintained and create loads of different habitats down there, which is great. And you can see that chap's definitely having fun with what he's doing down there. He looks very excited.
Sorry to interrupt, Simon. You've just got about a minute left or so.
That's great. I've got one more slide, and that's what we've got. So this group is really a group that has been running for quite a long time, the Northern Corridor Community Volunteers. And I just wanted to put a little slide in about how they have adapted during lockdown, because obviously what they do normally is they're outside all the time, looking after a specific area of land. So through the pandemic, they've got their volunteers retasked to deliver food parcels, but tried to keep up maintenance of land and structures that they normally work on. They've tried to keep the group engaged by running online courses, kept working, but in smaller groups. We've spoke to them, and what they've done is, instead of working as a team of 15, they've maybe gone out in 2s and 3s, socially distanced. But by doing that, they've also tripled the amount of sessions they've been doing, which has increased their productivity. And they've just tried to keep their local areas clean by litter picking and get members out to the green spaces, because there's nothing they could do massively as groups because of lockdown and what have you. So they've just tried to crack on and keep doing what they were doing, really, and keep up their good work. So I think that's probably taken me up to my time there. But obviously, thank you for listening. And if you have got any questions, we'll field those later, or you can, like I say, you can email me or give me a call. You can find me online anyway. Just search for tcd.org.uk and you can contact me through the website.
That's great. Thank you. Thanks, Simon. Yes. Thanks, Neil. Okay, that's great. Yeah, we're pretty much doing well for time, which is great. So this takes us straight into our panel discussion, and it's an opportunity for everybody in attendance today to share any thoughts, questions, queries that they might have with us. I'm having a quick look, and I can't see that we've had any questions put through during the presentations.
I can't see anything, Sarah, either at the moment.
Okay, and do we have any hands up, Hazel or Hannah? I've just realised I'm not sure how I see those when people don't have their cameras. I should have asked that before.
Yeah, so I've got the attendee panel open. So if anyone wants to ask a live question, they can just click the raise hand button. Oh, we have got a raised hand. Oh, it went up and it's gone back down again. So, oh yeah, we have. So we've got Phil. It doesn't say where Phil is from. But yeah, shall I ask Phil to unmute?
Okay, in fact, I'm involved with the Festiniog Railway in North Wales, so we're interested in what you're doing, although our work is probably rather different. But specific question is that an area I know in South Wales, there's a length of line which was woodland, was a railway line running through woodland. All the woodland, the trees on either side of the line have been cleared, and I wonder what the policy is over clearance of line-side trees, which I've seen in other parts of the country as well. It seems to be quite a stark activity and leaves the place looking very raw.
I'll take that one, Simon. Thanks, Phil. Yeah, so basically the work that we do, I briefly mentioned it with the Hadley Wood example. We have to make sure that all those numbers of trains and the line side is kept safe for running the trains through on the network. Don't know the specific site, but I do know that in areas we will have assessed that vegetation, and what we're trying to do is get it back into a state where we can maintain it and manage it efficiently and safely. And so in some places, the vegetation has been allowed to grow and has not been managed for a number of years. And so, yes, it does look quite stark after the initial works, depending on how much space we've got between the tracks and the fence line. The average width across the whole of the network is only about 12 meters, and where we need to keep the ballasted area, you'll know what, where the stones are, where the tracks are, that has to be completely clear of vegetation. And then that often leaves us only 4, 5, 6 meters before we get the fence line, and then we can't do anything outside the fence without the landowner's permission. So sometimes when we're managing those trees, whether it's because of autumn issues with leaf fall, whether it's because of sighting issues for level crossings, or for the signals that the drivers need to see, or for our staff who are working trackside so that they can see the trains coming and the trains can see them, there's occasions when we do need to remove that vegetation. Where we're trying to get to now, and this is where the biodiversity work comes in, is actually then managing and maintaining that. So the site that Simon mentioned at Great Stookley, that is being maintained as a grassland because of the great wart biting cricket, which is up there, which is fabulous, and it does work because it bit me when I was up there a few years ago. If Simon and the volunteers weren't doing the work that they were doing, that blackthorn and the brambles would start encroaching onto the grassland, and eventually you would then get the tree species coming in, and we'd end up with what we've got at that site that they've just cleared in South Wales. So they do need maintaining. That's where we've missed out for the last 30, 40, 50 plus years. And we need to get to a point where we can then create the structure of the vegetation next to the railway and then maintain it like that. And it's actually probably, again, not knowing the site specifically, but there will be occasions when actually getting rid of the trees that we've got there, or reducing the height, allowing the coppice regrowth, allows a whole load of other species to come in, and then we can maintain the sort of the grassland area quite close to the tracks, and then we can start pushing back to having those hedgerows and those trees on the fence line.
Thanks, Neil. That's really helpful I'm sure, to all the attendees today in understanding that process you have to go through around trackside clearance and development. I can see in the chat that Kirsten, sorry, Kirsten, I can't see where you're from my screen. I think she had a question for Simon at TCV, and she was asking around any community groups developing close to the Cumbria region. And I can also see that very helpfully Hannah has sent her a link to a useful page on your website which shows what community groups are in and around your area. But I don't know if you want to pick up from that, Simon, if you've got anything to add.
Yeah, it's difficult to know where they are community group wise, but what I can do is, if on our website you can put in your local postcode and you can do a search within 50 miles of that. It does up to a 50-mile radius search, so you can actually go onto the website and just find a community group near you, and you can check if there's any near you. I don't know of any off the top of my head.
Yeah, I can just see she's actually popped in Kirsten's actually had a bit of a search, and she can see, so she's had a look and can see some things in Greater Manchester and Liverpool. So I think she was just looking at groups a bit closer to her. So it looks like it's not maybe throwing that up at this moment in time.
Yeah, so like I say, if anybody can just, hopefully, well, if we can give them my details out afterwards at some stage, then you can contact me and I can have a look, or you can just have a look on the website. It's on the main TCV website, tcv.org.uk. On the community tab right at the top, you can just click on find a community group near you.
That's great. I can see that Felicity from Bishop Line has also just asked a question. Again, it's around community groups. So the Bishop Lines are located between Darlington and Bishop Auckland, South Durham. And she was just seeing whether you guys have any plans to increase coverage in particular areas such as the North East. Is that something that you guys do? Would you target particular areas around community activity? Or
it's something we're looking at the moment, yes. We are aware that there are, throughout the last sort of 20 years, the regional offices have been cut back a bit, as most charities have suffered over the last 20, 30 years, specifically over the last sort of 10 years. I don't know when those particular offices were closed, but we are doing some work looking at, unfortunately we've got nothing really in the far southwest in Wales or north of York. Basically, there's quite a big gap between York and Scotland, which I pointed out that it's a massive area. There's national parks, in all those 3 places, national parks in the southwest, national parks in Wales, national parks in the northeast specifically. So it's something we are looking at. Yes, can't say whether we're going to get any regional offices, but it's something we are aware of, and we're looking at how to sort of target those areas. Piece of work I'm doing actually at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, and maybe it's an opportunity as well for community rail groups to join as members as well, not only to perhaps benefit from the vast range of resources that you guys have available for any conservation and biodiversity work that they're doing, but that might also direct other people within their locality looking at your website to their groups and ways in which I'm getting involved.
Yeah.
I can see we've got a few hands up, so other questions coming in. So I'm going to just pass over to Hazel to introduce a couple of extra questions, and we can maybe come back to this if we need to.
Okay, thanks, Sarah. And can I just ask, after you've asked your question, would you mute yourselves? The controls have changed in Zoom for me, and I can't actually mute you. So yeah, if you'll just mute yourselves after. So the first one with a hand up is Helen Wright. Go ahead, Helen.
Yeah. Hi, sorry, I was just trying to find my mute button. So this is really a question for Neil. So I work on the High Peak and Hope Valley Community Rail Partnership, which runs through the Peak District between Sheffield and Manchester. And I'm really keen to do more work with our friends groups on improving biodiversity where we can. We've actually got a Network Rail Volunteer Day in October at one of our stations, where we're going to be clearing a bank on the approach road to the station, which is all part of the Network Rail land. So that's fantastic that that's already happening. What I'm just a little bit concerned about is that we sort of plough on ahead without any particular expertise, and so knowing that there are ecologists now working for Network Rail, is there a way of getting an ecologist to come out to look at a site, to give us proper expertise, so that we do the right thing and don't go clearing away loads of stuff that actually we should be keeping?
Excellent, thanks, Helen. Really good. I know the area quite well. I was brought up in South Manchester, so I've been across that bit, mainly walking, not on the train. But in terms of the ecologists, as I mentioned, we've got nearly 30 now, which, when you're covering an estate of 52,000 hectares, means that they've each got just over 1,000 hectares, which is quite a bit of land, and they've also got a bunch of other stuff. What I would suggest, it's the team that you've got coming from Network Rail to give you a hand. What I would suggest is if you get them to get in touch with the local line side manager for that stretch of line, and get them to see if they've got anybody who's able to come and just possibly give a quick briefing or something beforehand. They will have the best contact to if there is any of our ecologist colleagues who are available, possibly on the day or even in advance of the work, just to make sure that the teams understand what they've got. But on that approach, it's, depending on how wide it is, it's better that you get it looking good. One of the things that you'll know around the whole of the rail network, we want to make these things look approachable and nice, and it's that balance. That's one of the challenges we're having down at Yatton, I mentioned, is the balance of making it look nice but also making it biodiverse and also then safe, and it's trying to get that balance between them. So definitely get in touch with the local line side team. It would be the first bit of advice. If you can't get any to do that, come back to me through the details that you'll get on the end of my presentation, and I can help with that. But that's probably the best way. But also, it's just recognizing that, especially in these areas, we shouldn't get too worried if you're getting things planted, if you're getting things growing, then the biodiversity will come in and use that stuff. It doesn't matter whether it's native or non-native, as long as they're not the invasive things. We need to get it looking nice so that people actually want to come back and start using trains again.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Okay, yeah, we have another hand raised, and then we do actually have a question in the panel. So it's Kirsten again. Kirsten, are you wanting to ask a question live? I think Hannah's unmuting you.
Thank you. It's a question for Neil. So thank you very much for that guidance on Helen's questions. We are looking, I'm Kirsten Esbjörnsson, Furness Line, Lakes Line, South Cumbria Community Rail. We have already 2 station adoption groups that, in addition to the station, have community licenses with Network Rail for Network Rail areas outside the TOC areas, and we're looking at a third station adoption group working towards a community license as well. For them, it would be really good to see narrative from successful projects and latest published guidance that Network Rail would be looking to for biodiversity, but also the safety and nice looking, so to speak. So that's my question to Neil. Thank you, and thank you so much, both to Neil and Simon.
Okay, thank you. We do have, so one of the things I've sent through to Hannah is a link to the design guide that I mentioned. That's on our a Network Rail site called Safety Central, which has, as the name suggests, a lot of safety information, but we've also got an environmental page within that. And there's a lot of case studies and a lot of guidance notes within those pages on biodiversity, on a number of other schemes that we've got. So I think if Hannah, I think, is going to either post that in the chat or send it out afterwards. So I suggest going onto that link. The design guides I mentioned, they have a lot of they have case studies within themselves, so that they are there to help you. So if you've got a site that is currently a sycamore woodland and it's not quite fitting with what you're wanting to try and achieve, it also, from a Network Rail point of view, doesn't always help us. It helps with the understanding and the knowledge and how to transition from that woodland into something else that works for what we're trying to do. So both in terms of that, the sort of the visual aesthetics, but also the safety and also the biodiversity. So hopefully those documents and that website will help. And also that you can get quite a bit of this, again, the safety information off the Network Rail website, which is networkrail.co.uk. But in the first instance, if you go to Google or any good search engine and enter, if you do Network Rail, Safety Central and Design Guide, you'll get straight into the system and you'll be able to find that.
Anna's just posted a link to it.
There you go. That's even quicker.
Yeah.
Yeah, keep checking the chat, everybody. Useful links in there. I think we've got one more question, which we've just got time for in the chat, which is from Alison Levy, who I think is from the Lymington Brockenhurst CRP. So her question's for you again, Neil, which is, how do you manage or allow for animal movements, especially for species such as badgers who utilise runs across busy lines? Ideas that might be useful along roadsides, etc. would be helpful.
It's a very good question, also a very tricky one. Thank you, Alison. It's what the wildlife do is quite tricky. We can build all the wonderful houses for them and environments, but they'll say, actually, I'll just go and live in that fridge that somebody's fly tipped over there instead, and it can be quite frustrating. I know projects like the new railway lines, so East West Rail, and I'm assuming HS2 will be doing this sort of thing, is they're actually putting specifically generally culverts, which is where you've got a small tunnel, for want of a better phrase, underneath the railway, so that wildlife can cross. It is a problem. We do have quite a few badgers especially struggle down in the southeast of England, where we've got the third rail, which is where the electrification is at ground level, and they do suffer quite badly down in the southeast and also in Liverpool area. It's quite tricky. We've got a 180-year-old network, and this wasn't generally the considerations that the Victorians had at the time when they were building it. There are a lot of tunnels and bridges anyway, so there are places for them to go, but actually they generally like to go in that straight line, and if there's not the tunnel in the right place, then they won't use it anyway. And they don't use signs either. They don't read very well, which can be a bit of a tricky thing. There's a lot of more initiatives coming along. Generally, we don't go over the top of the railway because that just brings in a whole load of other constraints of construction over the top of the railway. Where we can, we are making those underpasses. Colleagues in Scotland are having to cope with beavers at the moment up on the east of Scotland, where they're doing what they do, which is create dams, which then floods the river, which then floods the railway. But they also like burrowing through things as well. So we're trying to create areas, again, safe areas for them to make that passage as well. Colleagues who I work with on mainland Europe, they have a whole load of different animals to cope with, a lot larger things like moose and the wild boar that they have a lot more of. And they actually have those migration routes. So they are actually putting in specific bridges and things to help with those processes. It's slightly trickier here. The roads have also got quite a few good design guides. There is the design manual for roads and bridges. I've seen squirrel runs in Thetford Forest, where they have the towers either side of the road and then a rope that goes across high enough to get above those double height articulated lorries. So there are a number of things. It's not the sort of thing that we would generally consider here, as I say, just because I don't like dangling things over the railway. So there are a number of different guides and approaches, as I say. So Highways England, now called National Highways, their guide is called the Design Manual for Roads and Bridges, which might also help you.
That's really helpful. Thank you, Neil. So that has taken us nicely into our break. I know we have got one outstanding question for Simon at TVC, but perhaps if we've got time in the next panel discussion or at the very end of the event, we can stay on just a little bit longer and cover any outstanding queries from people. So yeah, we've got a break scheduled now, 10 minutes. So if people want to go and refresh themselves, make a cup of tea and the like, and we all meet back here for 11:05 on the dot, nice and promptly, and we'll go into our next session. Thanks, everybody. We will crack straight back on. I'm delighted to be able to introduce our third and fourth panelists for this next session. Firstly, we have Joe Andrews from the Poacher Line CRP, along with Dr. Luke Dixon from the Bee Friendly Trust, followed then by Craig Sidebotham from Friends of Goostrey. So I will pass straight on to Joe.
Sorry, Sarah, I'm just going to let you know it's Craig Sidebottom. It is pronounced Sidebottom. It's okay.
I apologise. I'm not doing well with my pronunciation today. I'll pass you on to Joe Andrews, who's keeping it simple for me.
Sarah. So, good morning, everybody. I'm Joe Andrews. I'm the Community Rail Officer for the Poacher Line. And I've just got a couple of minutes to do a whistle-stop tour about how the importance of community engagement and partnership working helped us with our project down at Bosford Friendly Garden at the station there. So this was a piece of Network Rail land that was adjacent to the station, and for quite a while we decided that we wanted to do something with it to make it a community space, and previous experience had shown that it was really important to get the community involvement at an early stage, to get their views and their ideas on what they wanted to do with any land at the station. And these are some of the ways that we actually engaged with the community. So we did a flyer that we actually distributed to all the residents, outlining that we wanted to do something with the garden, ask for ideas, and also ask for any volunteer help. And we did some great public consultations with the parish council. We attended some meetings, asked for advice, any ideas and any help that they could do, and we also kept them updated on the progress during the build process. We also spoke to the school. We got them to do some garden design ideas for all the children, and the idea of the garden is actually based on an ideas that the children developed. And then we also reached out to the wider group in the communities like the Beavers here. So we asked them to design some bug hotels, and we held some workshops at the station to build those bug houses. And the overwhelming consensus that a sensory garden was wanted at the station on that bit of land, with a nod to encouraging bees specifically back into wildlife. So once we'd obviously decided on what we wanted to do, we needed to look to our partnership working for our wider assistance to get the project moving on. And one of those things was obviously permissions, and what permissions you need will depend on what sort of type of land you're on, whether it's Network Rail land or whether it's within your train operating company's leasehold. And they can range from community licenses to landlord permissions. You also might need to have CAT scans as well if you're looking to dig down to make sure that there's no cables, etc., underneath your area. So we obviously looked to partnership working as well for funding, which was a really important, vital bit. With our community engagement already with the parish council, we were really pleased to find that they were able to contribute to the funding, as well as the traditional train operating companies, local authorities, and all the other angles, so like Community Rail Network, to get some funding. We also managed to get donations funding-wise, and the Beaver Lions provided a bench. And we also partnered with Grow Wild UK, and they provided some seeds free of charge. So for all of our partners as well that couldn't provide any financial funding, it was vitally important that they helped with the physical working parties. And we had working parties for Network Rail, East Midlands Trains as it was then, groups in the community and volunteers to actually build the garden. But one of the really most important things that we found with partnership working was trying to find something to do to bridge that gap in our knowledge. So we knew that we needed to do a sensory garden and we needed to encourage bees, but we had identified a gap in our knowledge that we didn't know where to go. And so we were delighted to partner with the Bee Friendly Trust. Not only did they bring additional funding to the project, obviously they were able to bring their vast knowledge and wealth of experience to create the biodiverse garden that you see there today. So I really can't emphasise how important it is to get as many partners and as much community engagement as you can together. And you can see some pictures here of the working party building the garden down at the station. By working together, this is what we achieved, and this is the garden as it stands in the last month or so. I hope you'll agree it's a vast improvement on how it was before. We were delighted also to be awarded first place in the Enhanced Stations environment at the 2019 Community Rail Awards, which we were delighted about. So, but now what I want to do is I want to pass on to Dr. Luke Dixon from the Bee Friendly Trust, and he's going to speak to you now about biodiversity at the station, how we achieved it. Over to you.
Thanks, Jo. And can I thank Jo in advance for the photos I'm about to show you, because she's responsible for almost all of them, I think. And she's right, it was for us the biggest project we'd ever done. Why the railways? Why the Bee Friendly Trust? We started, myself and a colleague, a couple of beekeepers in London, realizing how important the railways were as corridors for pollinators. There's been some talk earlier about particularly mammals crossing the tracks, but for the in built-up areas, in dense urban areas, the railways are a wonderful source of corridors for pollinators to move around. And we thought we could do something to enhance that. And rather naively and innocently, we decided we'd start at Putney Station, where my colleague Kais lived. It was his local station. He visited it twice a day, going and coming and going. And we thought, well, we'll put a nice planter on this rather neglected and forgotten station. And we've learned a lot since, but we went onto eBay and bought some high-vis jackets and rocked up very early one Sunday morning and said, we've come to put in the planter. And there it stood. And so that was the first of 50 stations. We're much more au fait with permissions and risk assessments and all the things that Jo's just touched on. In fact, I probably knew more about risk assessments on the railways than is good for me. So that's why railways. We started with some planters and we've extended, as I say, we've got about 50 stations around the country, and the Bottisford Community Garden, which I'm about to share with you when I click on the right button, is just an absolutely wonderful project. This is Joe showed you a slide of what it was like. In fact, it was a lot worse than that, and it was a lot even worse than this photograph, because we didn't know that there was a building on the site when we first saw it. It was so densely overgrown. But it has to be said, it was a wonderfully biodiverse habitat. And although we've completely transformed it, we were very, very conscious from the beginning that although there were things we wanted to do with it, and we wanted to make it a haven, as Joe says, a sensory garden somewhere that people could come and sit, bring their children, endless groups come and use it, and have used it during the whole process of setting it up. We were very conscious of a responsibility not to completely destroy the habitat that was already there and had been there for decades and decades. As we began to explore it, we found more and more stuff there. There's a lot of rubble. It was the remnants of the land next to it, which is now a car park. When the car park was built, everything that had to be dug up to make the car park was just piled in this site that you see now. And so one of the things we were very keen on was to recycle as much as possible, to recycle a lot of the rubble, to get the building back into a fit state to use. Didn't have electricity, and it did have water though. And we managed to get both the water reinstated and get electricity reinstated. We had to take down quite a few trees. Not something we did lightly. We did a tree survey. We didn't do any work during the nesting season, and we needed to open up the canopy. There were 1 or 2 trees that weren't very healthy and were dangerous, and so had to be taken out. But as you'll see as we go through, we did manage to recycle all the trees in some way in the garden we finished up with. You'll see there's a little pile of logs, what we call a creature feature, in the upper left-hand side of that image. For all sorts of creatures use it, invertebrates and so on. But you can see a couple of stumps from trees there that we did have to take out. One of the things we were very conscious of was, because of the trees there, that there are habitats on every level. There are habitats above the tree line, there are habitats within the trees, there are habitats all the way down to the ground, and indeed below the ground. And we were very conscious that we had a responsibility to ensure that there were still habitats working at all of those levels. So this is the shed that, as I say, we didn't know was there. It's got, as you can see, a new door, it has a new roof, and it's now an education centre, and it's somewhere to store all our tools. So it does mean that there's somewhere for us to retreat to and work out from when we're running workshops on the site. We were also very keen to ensure that there was good access to the site. So it's a sloping site, which presented 1 or 2 issues, but we were anxious that it was accessible to wheelchairs, to buggies, and we thought it important to think about the diversity of the human species, as well as the diversity of the animal species that were using it. This was early days. You can see a lot of bark there, which we used for mulch. Again, that was the trees that came down were shredded, and the mulch that came out of them was used at ground level. So we tried to recycle everything, and nothing was removed from the site, and everything was repurposed on the site. And so it's very, very different. You can see all the mulch there. You can see the paths. You can see some of the rubble we used to make borders for the raised beds we built. You can see the shed again in the background. Some of the volunteers made this wonderful bug hotel. Expertise is great, but I always advise people, don't be frightened to get stuck in. And as I think someone was saying earlier, the wildlife will do what it does. and all we can do is give them a helping hand. And this just, again, made out of pallets that were dumped at the side of the site when we first got there. A lot of the brushwood that we'd taken down on the top of the pallets there. So they sort of, people tend to think of them as bug hotels or call them bug hotels, but they're a habitat for all sorts of creatures, not just bugs. And don't worry too much about getting the size of the holes right. I keep getting emails from people saying, oh, are the holes I've drilled in my bug hotel right for mason bees or leafcutter bees or whatever it is? But as long as you've got space and it's dry and provides a haven, that creatures will come into it. I mentioned going below ground as well. So we did build a pond, again, very, very simple pond. And you'll see at the bottom of the picture, there's also a sort of, I suppose you could call it a bird bath, but all creatures need to drink water. Even bees need to drink. So it's important to have water as a resource, and if you're building a pond, to have a way in and out of the pond. And you can see a little walkway there at the side where amphibians can come and go as they need to. And another view of the bug hotel with again some just repurposed clay pipes that we found on the site to enable a runway for hedgehogs and other small mammals to get through and hide and disappear under the bug hotel. And so just some wonderful pictures that I think one of our volunteers has taken, just to give you some idea of what might be there. I think this is a white-tailed bumblebee covered in pollen, absolutely covered in pollen. These are cinnabar moth caterpillars, and they feed on ragwort. Now, of course, ragwort's toxic, so it tends to be removed as much as possible. But here's some cinnabar moth caterpillars, and one of, I thought I had a picture, and here's a picture of a cinnabar moth, just proving that they mosquitoes, sorry, not mosquitoes, that's because I was bitten by a mosquito last night. I'm just going to go, sorry, this has gone horribly wrong in the order, but quickly, just back through these. Tadpoles, and what happens to tadpoles? They become frogs and they need to get out of the pond and escape into somewhere to live out of the water, so hence getting in and out of the pond. This is a violet ground beetle, I think someone might tell me otherwise, and this is a dragonfly that hatched only last week. This was a photograph taken, I think, on Wednesday or Thursday last week. And just to remind you, humans are also a species. They need access and looking after in the space. These are two able-bodied humans. But as I said earlier, we did want to make it as accessible as possible to absolutely everybody. Yeah, I've got a timer on here. So so 3 quick pictures of other places we've done, repurposed what are they called? Beehives into bug hotels. A competition we did in Peterborough Station with the local schools for children to design a bug hotel, and an educational mural we've done at Frome Station. That's it. Thank you very much. Goodbye.
We'll just go through now to Craig Sidebottom.
Oh, I'm sorry, I should have done that. My apologies, Sarah.
That's okay, no problem. So I'll pass you over.
Okay, can everybody see that?
Yeah, we got it.
Yeah, good, that's good, good. All went quiet there, started to worry me slightly. So I'm Craig Sidebottom. I'm part of a small station adoption group from Goostrey Station in Cheshire. There are around 9 people in the group, and today I want to talk about what we're doing regarding biodiversity and community engagement. So firstly, we'll look at how we engage with our local primary school, our scouts and our beavers. And we also helped with the Duke of Edinburgh scheme as well. Then I'll move on to our GIS mapping system we use to monitor wildlife at the station. So the picture you see in front of you is what we term the large grassy bank. We were approached by the scouts to do a project at the station, and duly 30 children arrived. And the beavers helped to tidy the car park and the paths to the station, and erected our book hotels. And they had great fun doing it as well. We also told them about the station's history as well. But FOGs also work with the primary school. So the primary school do artwork for us, and we now have vandal-proof display boards for them to put their artwork in. So this is a picture of the beavers helping us erect a triangular book hotel. The actual grassy bank is a very large area that covers a lot of Goostrey Station. This is just an example of a book hotel or a butterfly hotel that we've erected all around the stations. We've also got a lot of nest boxes there as well. And this is a triangular book hotel. I'd seen this up in Silloth on the northwest coast. And I took some photographs on how it was constructed. And then I managed to produce 3 of these book hotels, which are situated on the grassy bank. Again, this is the grassy bank. This is one side of the grassy bank. And we've populated this with species of flowers that will attract bees and pollinators in general. And we've done quite well this year. We've certainly seen an increase in butterflies. We've planted things like buddleias and things of that nature. This is just a quick view of the actual display boards that the primary school basically do projects for us. So we've had projects to do with birds, biodiversity and plants. And this one is a project they've done, which is actually the men at the docks. So GIS, what you're seeing now is the interface of a free software package called QGIS. So if I briefly explain what GIS is, GIS stands for Geographic Information System. The definition of GIS is a system designed to capture, store, manipulate, analyze, manage, and present all types of geographic data. Other uses for GIS include inventory and management of resources, crime mapping, establishing and monitoring routes, managing networks, managing properties, and managing agricultural crop data. So I said earlier that everything you see, I will demonstrate today, is free. I've either created the data myself using this software, or I downloaded it. So this is Goostrey. There's 2 areas of Goostrey, these 2 areas here, and we have a main road that runs and basically joins them up. And here is our little station, Goostrey Station, probably about 400 or 500 meters from the end of Goostrey village itself. So if you look at the data, the map's okay. It shows you a general overview of the area, but it's very easy to interact with QGIS and switch off data and on as you wish. So this is data I've created. So this position here is the ticket office. This is the railway cottages. And I can bring on other data that I've created. This is topographic data. So you see straight away our map scale changes considerably, and we now have a better view of the station at Goostrey. This particular area here is what we call the grassy bank area. This is where an awful lot of our work is done. And these are the woodland areas, the hatched areas I've just brought onto you now. Those are the woodland areas. So we have quite a large woodland area on the crew platform here. And over here on the road, this is the road that runs along, and this is another large area of woodland here. So we're talking about biodiversity. This is a little project that we did. These red dots that you can see were bird sightings. And if I right click, we can open an attribute table associated with this. Now, an attribute table is basically, it's a graphical spreadsheet. So you can add as many columns and rows as you want to your attribute table. So in this case, we've got the ID of the point, we've got the species that we identified, the numbers, and the survey date. And that's really all we needed for this particular job that we were doing, this little project that we do. These are tree locations. These are the main trees around the site. And again, if I pick on the attribute table, you'll see very, very simple data again. The ID of the point, sycamores, oaks, beeches, and the date of the survey. And we can collate a lot of data over a period of months or years. And obviously, your spreadsheet will hold a lot more data. These little triangles that have appeared, these are our bird boxes, locations. These are bug hotels. These are the 3 triangular bug hotels that I showed you earlier. We've got some butterfly hotels, which is the black dot here, and I think we've got one over on the cruise side over here. So you can do an awful lot of data, bring data into your GIS system. But GIS is good for other things because you can add context to your particular project. So here we have an old map, and we think it's around 1940s, we think. And at one time, this is the ticket office here, this black blob here, and that's the crew waiting room. And at one time, there was a line that came in, which is now defunct, and there's now buildings on that. So you can add historical context to your particular project. This is some 3D data. Again, it is free. I've sourced this and downloaded it onto our system. What you're seeing is these particular areas here, this is what we call the bare earth. So that's the actual ground surface. And what you can see here are the tops of buildings, the roofs of buildings. So here's the railway cottages. Here's the ticket office. And these points here are all trees and things of that nature, poles, you'll also find that. This other data, again, free source, is what I said is the bare earth. So that's the ground surface. And you see here these indentations into the mapping. Well, these are our ponds. So it's a very good data set to give you visual aspects to your particular site. And finally, we can bring in aerial photography, of course. So this here is our large grassy bank. As you can see, as I said earlier, it's a very large bank. And these are all the trees that surround the site. And so we have a lot of nest boxes in there, although we do tend to lose them because of the summer growth. So that's a very quick look at what GIS is. Let me reiterate again, this software is free. It's open source. Anybody can download it and use it to create biodiversity projects on their particular stations. So what's its output? Well, its output are maps. So here you see, this is a tree survey that we did. And the map that you see is automatically generated by the software. It will automatically generate a legend for you as well. So whatever aspect you're looking at on your particular project or your map, it will automatically populate your map. And what we do then is we'll take some pictures of leaves, different species, to give it context. And these maps will then be uploaded onto our website. And we have display boards as well that we put inside those as well. This is one of my favorites. I have a bat detector, and and we did a plan where we wanted to look at were there any bats on site, basically, and we identified pipistrelle contact readings. The readings are little black dots you can see, so we walked along the platform and picked up all the different readings, and we identified it as a pipistrelle because the software enables you to record the frequency, and this part here is the pipistrelle bat scan that we actually recorded. We compared it with other scans and frequencies, and we managed to identify it as a pipistrelle. But they're obviously feeding along the woodland areas here in the evenings. And again, we'll get the cubs and the scouts to come along, and they love doing things like that. This is a quick example of a bird survey we did in April 2021. Again, the map is basically the same, we just bring on more data. The legend automatically populates with whatever I switch on and off. And I've added an attribute table to the map as well. So it's identifying the ID number, the species, the numbers that we're seeing, and the survey date. And again, we'll just add pictures to the map to give that context. So when people are stood at the station getting very, very bored, they can sit down and look at what we've created. This map you're seeing is conceptual. So this is looking at Goostrey Parish Council, a village bird survey. So the idea that we had was we have a great working relationship with the primary school. Was kids that live in the village, they can do a back garden survey at their homes. They can add the data to an Excel spreadsheet, and then we can create the map and also put in the attribute table. So we're looking at the ID point, description of the bird they've seen, the numbers, and the actual date they did the survey. This is our latest little project, actually. This is Fayal in the Azores. I have a friend who's an ex-mariner, and he does beach cleans. So he asked me to look at, is there something we could do on the GIS side to create some maps. So the stars that you see here are where he did a beach clean. This inset is actually showing this is the beach area along here. And it's actually just a zoomed in area of where he did his collections. And his collections are here, in general plastic pollution examples. And he can get, several kilograms of rubbish that comes onto the beach. And one of his pet hates are these things, which are lobster straps. Each lobster strap has a lot of information based on it. And if you remember, I said earlier, you can add as much data or as little data to your attribute table. Well, here's an example of that. This is a table showing the catalogue lobster straps, plastic pollution information from North America and Canada. So the data set showing us where the state that the lobster strap came from, the year it was attached to the lobster pot, and the years to landfall. So, you're looking at some of these years to landfall, and we've got 12 years in some cases, 21 years in some other cases. So GIS is able to do your biodiversity and also bring. Yep.
You've just got 1 minute left. Just to
okay, that's great. I'm just done. So you can bring a lot more data, and then you can do spatial queries with it. So that's really a quick overview of what GIS is about. It's great fun to learn, and we can do an awful lot with it, certainly on the biodiversity side. So I'll hand it back now to Community Rail Network. Thank you.
That's lovely. Thank you very much to our speakers just then. So we'll go straight into panel discussion. And I know we've got a few questions that have come in on the chat and on the Q&As. So I'm just going to run through those quickly first. So first, a couple of for you, Craig. If you want to pop your camera on as well, that would be great. Make sure your audio is still on too.
There you go.
Lovely. So first one was just asking actually, so it was Sarah from Meldreth, Shepworth and Foxton CRP, I think, just asking whether you have a link to the vandal proof art display boards that you could share at all.
Yes, I mean, we are a band of brothers and sisters, really. So people will do different aspects. So I can get that information. They were quite expensive, but they do make a big difference, because we did have problems, which I think every station have with vandals. You know, kids getting bored at night. But these have been really, really good, and I think it makes it look a lot more professional as well when you have that. But yeah, I mean, if you want to drop you an email, Community Rail, and then give her my email address, that's no problem at all.
Yeah, it's probably something we could share out to all today's attendees, because I'm sure there'll be other groups that would be interested.
We're very people friendly at Goostrey Station, so if anybody's got any questions or they think about it, you know, just approach Community Rail. They will give you my email address, and then we'll touch base. Yeah.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Craig. The second one follows on a little bit from that, because it's linked to antisocial behaviour again, and it's from Tina. Sorry, Tina, I haven't had a chance. I think your South East Communities Community Rail Partnership, I think, and she was just asking if you were able to secure the bug hotels so that they weren't picked up and thrown via antisocial behaviour groups and the like. Don't know if you or Luke have any advice on securing those types of structures?
But personally, no. Our kind of a book hotel is quite a large area of station, so it's not something we've actually thought about. If it was platform based, I would certainly think that you would need to make some provision so they're not kicked onto railway lines. I think. Yeah, I mean, whether Luke's got any ideas, it's not something I thought about. I think it would be very much station specific. I say we've got quite a lot of land around the station, so we're not really in that situation.
Yeah, we always have to be very, very mindful of anything being able to be moved and kicked, thrown, lifted, shifted. We will have just finished a project at Cambridge Station, and that included a piece of metal artwork, and everyone at the station said that will be stolen, that will not last a week, it'll be gone and melted down. So we did have to, it's got sort of nearly half a ton of concrete holding it down, and as yet it hasn't been stolen. But it is something we're very, very mindful of, obviously. But something else sort of tangentially to that, which I think is true of Bottisford, is, as Joe will, I'm sure, confirm, we did everything to involve as many local young people and local youth groups as possible in the project, so that they had a sense of ownership. And I think that was really important from the very, very beginning. We did workshops with youth groups to help design the project, to help create artwork for it, to help with the planting and the building. So it's not an answer to everything, but there was a lot more antisocial behaviour. There were a lot of drug taking things going on inside that site before we got in there. So you know, I'm not going to say that involvement of young people is a panacea, but it certainly helps. And I think that was true, Joe, wasn't it, of Bottisford, that there were an awful lot of young people involved.
Yeah, absolutely. You just preempted me. I was about to say that it's key to the community engagement and the sense of ownership. You know, these kids have been involved and they don't want to damage what they've been involved in. It's community pride. As you said, it's not the be all and end all, it's not the answer, but as much community engagement as you can get, I would encourage for a successful project and for ongoing as well, for ongoing maintenance of your sites. Yeah,
I think it worked in two ways. We were a lot of the little bug hotels and things were built in workshops, in schools, out with the Scouts and with other groups. And then I can remember even on the opening day, there were some rather stroppy young people getting off a train, coming home from school, and saying, oh, you know, what's going on here, blah, blah, blah. And we just invited them in, and they had a drink with us, and we showed them around. And it was that sense of creating spaces that people feel that they can go into, and it isn't someone else's space. And I think we were really conscious of that in Bottisford.
Yeah, and something they wanted as well, something that what the community wanted. We didn't just go in and to create a garden. We really got the input, and it was a garden that was wanted and needed by the community.
And that's been true of everything the Bee Friendly Trust has done, pretty much from when we started, that we're reactive rather than proactive, that we don't just stomp in and put things places and leave them. We always work with at least one or two, if not a larger group of local people.
Yeah, so important, isn't it? That consultation and community engagement, and that being part of the process and the success of the project as well. Okay, so we've got another question for Craig from Fiona Saxon from Worcestershire CRP, I think. So yeah, Craig, she was asking how you pinpoint the sightings and positionings on the GIS system.
Well, I could get quite technical here. I mean, in our case, I'm very, very busy, so I have to kind of cut corners. But generally, it's if you have a map that I've generated and created, you can basically just do it by eye, basically. I mean, you can get eastings and northings and go down to that extreme if you wanted to do that. But you know, in our case, we would just do a visual point, a sort of look around and say, well, we're next to the ticket office on the left-hand side, and we'll put it there. But you can get another data set that works with QGIS. So it's called QField. So basically, you create your map that I've done, you upload it to your phone, and then it has a set of data sheets. And because your phone is GPS orientated, as you walk along, you can populate it, and it'll so basically it's like a set of data fields, like a little spreadsheet. You can fill that information on, but then your GIS will also populate an X and Y field as well. So you get an eastings and northings, then that'll go straight into your GIS. So that's kind of do it by eye to start with, and if you want to get very, very clever, then you can do things like that. But hope that doesn't confuse too many people.
No, that's it sounds really interesting, and clearly, Craig, I think you are the expert in this area, and potentially groups and members are going to be getting in touch with you.
What I would say is that I'm not an expert. I have a lot of interest, and I love biodiversity. You know, stations are so important to help improve, particularly pollinators. We've got great problems with pollinators, and we need to encourage that. And there's a lot of land on a lot of stations, and you know, if we all kind of converge together, I really feel, you know, we can meet with people like Luke and Joe and people like that, who, you know, it's all about networking. This is a key to everything in business or whatever. Networking is key. People know what people do, and then you've got advice and people to go to for particular sets of advice, you know, from Neil and the rest of the people, you know. So it is important, networking.
Yeah, we've got a comment from Andy Buckley. Sorry, Andy, I haven't checked exactly where you're based, but just saying how fascinating your presentation was, Craig, and he's really interested in finding out more about the QGIS system, and is suggesting perhaps that's something that Community Rail Network could look at providing further information to members on and about. So that's something we'll look to consider and may pick your brains on.
Well, it's very simple. You type into Google QGIS, and then that will come up, and then you just download it. I learned an awful lot from YouTube, and there are absolutely fabulous videos out there on YouTube for QGIS. So it starts off at the very basics, and it builds up. And some of the projects that I've seen, particularly in the Azores, actually, I've seen people who are doctors and of that ilk, you know, and they have done some stunning work. You know, they're doing lots of spatial analysis with that data, So you know, you can learn it if you've got that your inclination. And don't forget, you've got children as well. And you know, if our group is quite elderly, so you can always encourage the scouts and the kids to learn this software, because it will stand them in good stead for the future. You know, they're learning about databases. They can learn about, you know, interacting with people as well. So it's you know, it's a good system, and it's, as I say, I think it's a stunning free software package.
Yeah, it sounds like there could be some opportunity to link up with local schools, because I think they'd see a lot of benefit, not only in the biodiversity side of things, but tying in with curriculum and use of technology and computer skills and the like, and geography and so on. It could be a really good selling point. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, I'm just having a quick look. I don't think we've got any hands up, because I think Hazel and Hannah would have interrupted me and let me know. Yeah, lots of interest in the system. Hannah's put a link on the chat as well, and as I say, we'll consider possibly looking into doing something on that. I know that Sally from Esker Valley Railway had posed a question, which Luke, who's been very savvy, has already responded to on the question and answer chat, but it was around just looking for assistance with funding and project opportunities with the Bee Friendly Trust, and Luke had said he's more than happy to kind of converse with members who have got questions around that side of things. Is that right, Luke? If people just drop you an email?
That's absolutely right. beefriendlytrust@hotmail.com, or just via our website, so beefriendlytrust.org. Really easy to find. We're a tiny team, just myself and Emma work a day and a half a week, and then everyone else is volunteers. But we will certainly give you whatever help and expertise we've got, pass you on to other people, and we do have some funding ourselves to occasionally help with projects.
That's great. And obviously do talk to the support and development team here at Community Rail Network as well, because they've often got, you know, lots of information they can provide you around our own funding streams, but also other funding streams that might be in and around your area. And obviously, as Simon was saying earlier with TCV, you know, as if any of our members also become members of that organisation, that can open up other streams of funding. So it's worth remembering that and checking that out. Lots of really lovely comments coming in from attendees, just saying how useful they found today's session. Lots of food for thought, and enabling them to think how they can make their own station environments as attractive, and make the most of biodiversity within their own areas. So lots of positive comments from everybody attending.
Can I just jump in there? If that's okay. It's looking like there is a real lot of interest, not only just in biodiversity, but also in the GIS system. And I know you said we might look at doing something, but I was going to ask Craig while he's here, while we've got him, that if we looked into the possibility of doing a little bit of a workshop, which could be a hands-on practical, whether you might consider helping us out with that, Craig, because we've got a few.
Yes, I certainly. I mean, if it helps biodiversity, then yeah. But let me reiterate again. I'm not an expert. A lot of times I have to bumble through things to get from A to B. So it's not my natural. Although I deal with computer-aided design. I've done you know, contaminant 3D modeling and things like that. GIS, I work with habitat people, so I was aware of it. Yeah. Yeah, I'm more than happy to help anybody out. You know, even personal webinars if I can fit it in. Yeah, that's not a problem. You know, because we're all here with the same interest, which is you know, biodiversity and trying to make these stations a lot more friendly for wildlife, and let's see what we can do. So yeah, I'd be happy to do that.
Yeah, I think it would just give people a little bit of a running start, and then they can sort of back that up with tutorials and everything else. But we'll see anyway. We'll talk offline about it. Sorry.
No worries. Yeah, no worries.
It sounds like the software is really, you know, the fact that you're saying as well, Craig, that it, you know, you can just play around with it and you get to it and you get to those answers. It sounds like it's very user friendly and intuitive. So yeah, I'm sure as members are going on and having a look at it, they'll also start finding their way around too. You might all be reading this in the chat, but Brian, our head of support and development teams, just prompting just to say that you can use the CRDF grant funding to match Luke's projects as well. So just do bear that in mind. Just having a look down. So I've got a comment from Helen Wright just saying, wonder if Network Rail ecologists could help as well. They will use the system all the time. Is that I'm not sure if that's in relation to the QGIS system we're talking about.
I think it's possibly related to data and GIS technology. We do have our own systems. We are collecting a lot of more information. Knowledge of what other people have seen is also really useful for our teams. You know, we will, for example, may have to be going through Goostrey to do work in the future. Knowing what Craig has already found with his colleagues in Goostrey will be useful information, because otherwise we'll have to send somebody out to find out where the nuthatches were and all that sort of stuff. So knowing it in advance helps us target, and we know that we need to send a bat specialist there because we know that there's bats in the area. So that's always going to be really useful. I mentioned earlier on about talking to the local Network Rail team. If you can get a hold of them, then that's one way to, you know, to understand what data we already have. Not all of our systems are publicly accessible, but they might be able to do a download so that you can actually see, sort of in, you know, old-fashioned paper format, what was there, just to help with that process of actually knowing what you've got before you start.
Neil, also what I thought would be useful as well is the data set that I created is specific to our station. So I mean, your ecologists, they will have a particular way of requiring data to be uploaded. So for example, I don't know what system they use. It might be ArcGIS or it might be MapInfo or something along those lines. But if there was, for example, if they had a particular blank shapefile, point data or linear feature or a polygon, then if that could be pushed around as a blank template, you know, we could populate that, and we'd be able to fill in the sequences that you would require to build up a lot more data for your individual stations.
We are just getting a handle of what our data needs to look like. Excuse me. Yeah. We're struggling with the fact that we measure everything in Victorian speak, so we're down to miles, chains, yards, and inches. And yet we've got a 21st century system which measures it to the exact millimeter and sub-millimeter accuracy. So we're having to transition between the two, but definitely, yeah, we are working on creating polygons for each 1/8 of a mile, roughly 200 meters on either side of the railway. And so getting there, so we're getting that for our own staff. And once we've got a handle on that, that's the sort of data set that we'll be able to take your information and put it into those polygons. So there'll be 3 or 4 polygons around Goostrey, and we'll be able to drop the information in onto a specific layer that we've got, and that's when the data sharing can happen. So yeah, definitely. It's
I think it's important that we communicate that, because you know, if people are interested, whatever it happens to be, whether they've seen particular species of bees or whatever, we can map it. Then you know, if we get the right communication with everybody and the correct formats for data, it's going to be so much easier to integrate it into your system down the line.
Exactly. I think there's something I'll maybe need to talk with the Community Rail Network guys, just to see whether we can get a layer on our GIS to understand where there is a partnership. And then that gives the opportunity then for the Network Rail teams, when their planning works, they can then find out what data already is held by the local partnership, because everybody will be doing it now. You've spoken, Craig, so thank you for that. And then they can get in touch with them, start building up those local relationships, which you know, there will be somebody, but they might find somebody else. They might find the ecologist who's got a wee bit of time to give a hand, you know, on a Saturday afternoon sort of thing. So there's that. And I mean, I'm a cub leader myself. I know that there are a lot of those within Network Rail as well. So you've then got a link into the Scout network as well.
Yeah, good.
So much opportunity for partnership working, I think, in this particular area, isn't there? It's great to hear all these ideas being discussed and thrown around. So I'm conscious that we're just slightly going over in our timings, and we'd said if people are happy to stay on just for an extra 5 minutes. I think we've got just one outstanding question from the previous panel, but I think otherwise it's looking quiet now on the questions. But Hannah and Hazel will let me know if I've missed anything.
There's no specific questions, there's just plenty of comments, and I think it might be handy to bring Simon back in now as well, Sarah, and it would be interesting to know if the conservation volunteers ever use any of the GIS systems and things like that as well. But like you said, there's an outstanding question in the Q&As as well, Sarah.
Yeah, not to my knowledge, guys, because like I only look after the community network. In the Doncaster office is it's a bit weird because it's totally separate from all the other sort of practical officers. In the Doncaster office, it's more of an admin office. It's where finance, HR, the directors and work out of. So, and marketing. So we don't really have a practical team. I can certainly find out, but we don't have a practical team that I can refer to on a daily basis to find things like that out. Certainly never come across it, and nobody's ever mentioned it. Put it that way.
Mm. I bet with the number of members you've got, therell be somebody out there using it.
I would imagine there are, yeah. Like so, 1,700 member groups now, and on average, well, I think I worked out on average about 25 members per group, so it works out at something like 30,000 volunteers that are that are sort of within the groups in total, yeah.
Okay, well, I'll just quickly run through this last question then. So it was from the previous panel session, so it's aimed at both Neil and Simon. So it's actually from one of our own team, Ian, in the support and development team, and he was just asking whether you're planning to work with the Queen's Green Canopy, plant a tree for the Jubilee, and if so, whether you'd be able to support, or if any support would be available to Community Rail Network members as part of that. I don't know if that's I'll go to Neil first, maybe.
So yeah, certainly we have talked to the Queen's Green Canopy, and I've had a meeting with Colonel Dan Rex, he's the CEO of that. I think he used to be Equerry to Her Majesty. So we are looking to see how we can support. I mentioned about Yatton and trying to tie in something that was planted when she acceded to the throne in '53, looking to see how we can spruce up that that's a completely the wrong phrase for yew trees, apologies, to tidy up that garden, but linking into all the stuff that we've heard about today from Luke, in terms of the making it look good but not necessarily worrying particularly about the species, just getting something there for the biodiversity. So we are talking to them. We have got a really good relationship with the Tree Council, and have done now for a decade or so, just over a decade. They were the ones who introduced us to Colonel Rex. So there's opportunities through that way, but also just on the link of tree planting, we've also been funding the Tree Council for a few years now in terms of tree planting, and you can apply for grants to them for community planting schemes, not even necessarily next to the railway. So there's an opportunity from that side of things. But yeah, we've got a massive opportunity, and we're looking to try and get involved as much as we can.
Great. Simon, are there any plans at your end to get involved with that campaign that you're aware of?
Not that I'm aware of, no, but I could certainly find out from marketing. I know we did get involved in the Plant a Tree for London one a couple of years ago, where they planted about 25,000 trees in London, and our groups did get involved in that. Yeah, I can certainly have a look, because we do get involved, like I said, with the OVO Energy and their annual planting strategy. 600,000 saplings this year we've got to give away to anybody. So just to reiterate that one, you can just go onto the TCB website. You don't have to be a member group to apply for those trees, but we're certainly probably going to be running some sort of promotion or time with that offering, and the community network would seem a shame to miss out on all those sort of people who are doing good work and not sort of offer them the chance to join the community network as well. But yeah, because we're pretty mad on planting trees anyway. So yeah, I'll certainly find out.
That's great, thank you, Simon. So I think Hazel and Neil both got their hands up.
Yeah.
Hazel, do you want to go first?
Yes, please. It's actually one for Simon. I know in talking with Fiona, we were very keen about making sure that Community Well Network members were aware of the conservation volunteers. And I know a number of groups are, but we also discussed the possibility of Community Well Network members also becoming part of the TCV, so part of the community network as well, and looking at possible mutual memberships and things like that. But I think certainly in terms of what the alignments, are you happy for groups to get directly in touch, and who should they get in touch with, Simon, please?
Oh yeah, it's fine. Yeah, just get in touch with me. Yeah, that's no problem. Yeah. Okay,
brilliant. Well, this recording will be available to all our members as well, so people will see that, and hopefully you'll get an influx. Maybe not too much, hey?
Yeah, no, it's fine, far away. But yeah, if on the main TCV website, tcv.org.uk, there's a whole section for the community, and if you just click on that, it's on the front screen. You can either click on there, and it's got my contact details on it, and there's an info at email address as well. So anything to do with the community network will come through to me. But if anybody does, I'll just point out very quickly, I'm not rubbing it in. I'm going on holiday next week, so if anybody does, if anybody does send me any messages after next Wednesday, you might not get a reply for a week.
Okay, Simon, thank you.
Neil, do you want to go?
Yeah, it was just picking up on Simon's point about planting trees. What the last thing I want to see is a lot of people spend a lot of time and effort and enthusiasm putting trees in, that then NetRel comes along and says, actually, that's in the wrong place. We're going to have to cut it down now. So one of the things that we have, I'll put a link into the chat once I finish talking, which links to a couple of onto that Safety Central website, where there's a couple of documents in the attachments section, which are recommended tree species planting guides, which just give a little bit of an indication. There's one specifically to the railway about which species we would prefer to see at what distance from the track. It just looks at what they do, how big they'll get, and sort of management and things that they'll need. And there's also a very good one which links to something that was produced by the Tree Design Action Group, that also looks at other places where you might be putting trees, and whether they're next to roads or footpaths, what the colour they'll be, what the actual height they'll get to. Be really quite useful, just so that people are aware what you have to do, because it's great. We want to plant them, but we also want to make sure they survive and they get big. We don't want them to die after the first season because nobody's watered them and things like that. So really keen to make sure it's the right tree, the right species, right habitat, the right bird box, the right beehive in the right place for the right reason is definitely what we want to get to.
Yeah, to say as well, just to what Ian said, then Neil, sorry, we do put our trees together. Well, OVO put their trees together in specific packages, so they don't just have, you don't just have like 10 yew trees or whatever. They'll have sort of like a hedgerow pack, a woodland pack, a sort of a local area type pack, things like that. And obviously, we do recommend that always get the landowners' permission first, because a lot of our groups work on council land as well, and they'll just. We have had occasions where they've just planted trees but not actually checked with anybody first to see if they could plant the trees there, never mind what species. So we also do recommend that people do double check before they start putting anything in the ground.
Yeah, that's really helpful, guys, and thanks for the promise of adding in those links to the chat as well, Neil. I think that'll be really helpful. And Hazel, do we make the chat available afterwards? Do we do that?
So not necessarily the whole chat, but what we will do, Sarah, we do a follow-up email to everybody, and we send the links to the presentations once they're up on our website. But what we can also do is Hannah and I, we can access the chat after. We'll extract these links and we'll pop them into that follow-up email as well. So everybody that has attended will get those links as well.
Fabulous. That's great then. Okay, so that probably leaves me to wrap up. We've gone a little bit over, but so appreciate everybody who was able to in terms of staying on and answering those extra questions and just getting the full benefit of the webinar. So obviously a huge thank you to our panelists today, Neil, Simon, Joe, Luke and Craig. Great contributions, really insightful, really interesting, and I can see from the chat members members are buzzing with ideas and thoughts, I think, on what they're going to be doing next. If there is anyone we didn't come to, or you think of something after the event and you want to share some comments with the team, please do just drop us an email. You can send that through to rob@communityrail.org.uk. I also, as an aside, I must just flag up our awards, which is happening on the 9th of December. Hopefully you've all seen the shortlist announcement, some fantastic entries in there. It was really interesting observing some of the judging panels I did this year for the first time. Loads of great projects, tough decisions were had to be made on those that shortlist. But just a reminder around booking your places. If you've not done that already, please do get in touch. All the information is on the Community Rail website. If you go to the events and training drop down, you'll see a page for the awards on there. So please do get on with booking places and the like. Okay, so as the webinar closes, our feedback form is going to just pop up, as I mentioned before. If you get a chance and can fill that in, it's really helpful to the team in terms of just making sure we can keep improving on what we're already doing. And I think I've covered everything, other than just to say a big thank you to everyone for being involved and wishing you all well until next time, and unless Hannah or Hazel tell me otherwise.